We all heard that a comparison is a kill of joy. But did you know that how you finish your workout, what mental state, what physiological state you finish your workout can actually impair your recovery and, on a long term, your progress? My name is Paolo, and today I will explain you how your mental attitude, comparing yourself to other people, and the way you finish every workout will have massive impact on your progress in the long term, and also how you will feel for the following day or two. It is all matter of a neural state. So we will get a brief breakdown of the nervous system. We have a central nervous system, CNS, that is our brain, and a spinal cord. We also have peripheral nervous system, and that one is broken down into two parts, sympathetic and parasympathetic. I know for everybody who has more advanced information, this is oversimplification, but for our purpose today, this will be enough. Central nervous system, peripheral nervous system. Peripheral, sympathetic, parasympathetic. Now, the sympathetic nervous system is what you might have heard before, our fight and flight response system. That one is responsible for us doing some action and responding to the outside world. What is very important is that this sits and is ruled by our limbic, emotional part of the brain. This one, fight or flight response, is something what also animals have. Dogs, cats, other primates, they all have the sympathetic fight and flight response system. The parasympathetic system is our rest and digest, where we are more chilled, we are socializing, we are more relaxed. The parasympathetic part and our neocortex, the newest part of the brain, is also a reason why we actually were able to develop into a society, because we talk before we fight. Okay, if all the conflicts and all the problems are only solved by straight up fight or flight response, we wouldn't make it as far as we made it as a human species. Sympathetic nervous system has these two elements. They are many times described together, fight and flight, but it's actually fight or flight. They are actually very different. They are opposite side of the same coin. In a most natural and simple to understand way, you can imagine the difference between chasing something as a predator or running away from something as a prey. The difference between doing something actively, dominating, or enduring something and being dominated. Okay? The physical representation can be exactly the same. A run. I'm running or I'm doing some activity. But the difference is, do I want to be there? Am I winning? Am I dominating the situation? Or I don't want to be there and the situation or the opponent or whatever it is dominating me. This very much applies to pretty much all our lives. This doesn't only apply to sport or physical performance. However, on the physical performance and sport, it's very easy to explain it and grasp that concept. Also, if somebody is stuck in one of these response loops and systems, through the physical activity we can reteach getting out of the flight and being more active for the fight, because naturally everybody senses that that's kind of where we want to be. However, it's also very important to say whether it's flow, that's the parasympathetic, fight or flight, that's sympathetic, or freeze response, which is again parasympathetic, but more on that later or some other time. These are all states and they have their function. They are not bad, they are not wrong, they all have their place and function for our survival and for our development. So being in a flight is not necessarily wrong if you know how to work with it. And if you're not spending too much time there, or it doesn't become chronic state that becomes your baseline. That would be a problem. How comparing yourself to other people can actually make you finish in a flight instead of the fight. Let's say you are a runner and you run for quite some time, you have all the gear, you know all your paces. And now out of nowhere, an old friend will go run with you. And he is actually winning over you. Not in a sense of winning a race, but he's, let's say, less gassed, he's catching up with your pace very well, and you know he's not a runner. And you don't really feel great about it because your expectation was that you will dominate him in that workout. And now this is creating a lot of problems because your expectation created a situation where you are actually losing in a field that you expected to be dominating. That creates a cortisol response, a stress response, very typical for flight. If you finish in a workout, in a fight, you will get afterwards more of a testosterone, growth hormone, and all the anabolic hormone responses, which leads to better recovery. However, if you finish in a flight because this guy beated you, and you don't even understand how he was able to do it, you created for yourself a situation where you finish with a high cortisol, which leads to less efficient recovery on a short term. So towards, for example, following day, you might have more soreness, your resources of the recovery will be delayed. And now also, you probably are really thinking about it when you are falling asleep. How come this guy was able to pull it off? Another real life example, I know a girl who was trying to be a professional CrossFitter. She was doing very well, and she was that type where she was fairly well rounded in multiple levels. She was above average in gymnastics, she was above average in lifting, she was above average in endurance type of workouts. However, she wasn't really, she didn't have really a specialty that she would be specializing in. She moved towns and she started to work and train with this professional team where there was specialists for everything. There were people who were really great at gymnastics, at weightlifting. In all domains, there was always a specialist. And her attitude was, well, I want to beat everybody. So she was always comparing herself to other people within their dominant field, which inevitably led to a really big problem where she, in her head, even though her numbers were the same and maybe improving slowly, but in her head, she was losing every day because she lost the gymnastic workout to the gymnast. She lost the endurance workout to the runners and the guys who were dominating the cardio. So eventually, after year and a half being there, she was regressing instead of progressing. But it wasn't the problem of the environment. The environment was just fine. The problem was her attitude and how she was looking at her performance compared to these specialists. So the expectations and everything what you set to your head is going to determine your output, and that will also determine how well you finish the workout, which will impact, on the other hand, and in following hours, quality of your recovery. Fight versus flight. Have you been dominated or you were dominating? Now, it's really important to also note that expectations versus what will actually happen is the key point. It's not about the actual numbers, okay? It is about your feeling about that output. You can come to the gym and have an amazing session, hit a new personal best in some lift. But if there is another guy who doesn't look the part, you know him, he maybe is drinking, he's not following his diet as you are, and he hits even higher weight, the fact that you just do your personal best didn't matter to you because you are comparing yourself to him, that will lead to a flight response where you are impacted negatively by the environment. What is really important is the expectations versus the reality. Let's say from the fighting perspective, in a sport, in a combative sport, jiu-jitsu, if you come and you know you are a beginner and there is a really advanced guy, some black belt, and you pull out really nice round against him. Yes, he finished you, but you were able to do your moves, you were able to somewhat protect yourself. The fact that you were physically losing and tapping out won't matter much because you did well compared to what you were expecting with this guy will happen. On the other hand, if some higher belt with a lot of confidence is going to a lower belt and that guy is either not really disclaiming that he has another martial art 20-year experience, or he's just naturally strong, or he just has a great day, and he will be frustrating the higher belt with good defenses. The higher belt, even he will be finishing, even he will be dominating the guy objectively, he will finish the training with a flight attitude because he was expecting way smoother run over this guy. This is something you need to always consider, whatever your sport, whatever your background, and whatever your activities are. I know it's way easier said than done, but if you are setting up high expectations and or there are certain days where it's just not working great for you, it can impair your recovery, it can put you into flight mode, which means higher cortisol, and it's just not going to do well for you in terms of recovery. On the other hand, if you have more loose attitude and you go to learn and you go with an attitude to always, I just want to get better. My objective is not to beat everybody. My objective is not to have always faster time. My objective is to be better every day. You are setting yourself for much more likely successful run with a good recovery, good days, and on a long term, it just leads to overall better performance. Because if you are chronically in that cortisol flight state, it's just not going to do any good for you. If you are constantly able to get good workout in because it feels good for you, you finished well, and you are maximizing the potential for your recovery with those testosterone responses, growth hormone responses, this attitude can make massive difference. If you have any questions, if you have any ideas, what would you like me to talk about, let me know in the comments, and see you next time.